What's up, everybody? Good to be with you. Sunday Smash. There's Ira. I'm Jeff. You guys are probably chilling, watching a little bit of football, but what an easy breezy weekend, huh? Before we get started, as always, you see it there on the sign. Like the button, or hit the like button, I should say. Smash that sucker. Make sure that we get this thing passed around for everybody, and more people learn about it. So like and subscribe, of course. What's up, buddy? That was an easy breezy game, a little rocking chair game, as I like to call it. It was over before it started, really.
Your whole weekend, man. Noles and Bucks.
I know.
Cruising through weekends. No sweat, not even worrying about a thing. Just kind of fsu and move on.
Well, it was a weekend of scouting, too, I feel like. I was watching that Miami game closely, and that disappointed me because that kid threw the ball well. And then obviously it was nice to see Clemson continue to struggle, and that's really the game we're going to be focused on as we look ahead, But it was kind of an interesting weekend. It does feel good. I don't care who it's against, to win a game going away, to win a game big the way you're supposed to win a game in which you're heavily favored and you take care of it right off the bat. I mean, after about midway through the first quarter, I think we all knew the deal there. And so that was nice to see. But it's a bigger part of that, Ira, and you've written about it on warchant.com, is that this team, man, the way they celebrate together, the way they pick each other up, kind of the way that they are. I sat for this game, just to let you know. I went to the game with my entire family, and my best friend and his family were in town, and we all sat down on the 50, and we were like third row. And the game was over so quickly in terms of the outcome, or what would be the outcome, that a lot of people left. So my kids were like right up against the railing. It was so cool watching players come over after Brownlee's pick six, and just the way that they kind of gathered and celebrated that for him. Each coach coming over, celebrating that with him. But also the players, like in between series, how attentive they were to the coaches, talking to each other. When the coaches would walk away, you could see, the players are still talking about how they were playing off of each other. Just stuff that is a sign of a really engaged team, a team that likes one another, a team that is feeling a lot better about itself, I can tell you that. And not just because of that game, but because of the successes over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and when we talked to Norvell during the week, we kind of talked about, especially on that Tuesday practice. Apparently that Tuesday practice, I mean, we were there, but sometimes we think it looks good, and sometimes coaches have a little slightly different viewpoint of practice. I thought Tuesday was good, but he thought it was fantastic. And the next day, he said Tuesday's practice was the best practice since they've been here, and that really jived with a lot of things I was hearing around the program about how good these kids have how much they bought in a sense of just taking care of all their responsibilities, getting things done, not bitching and moaning when things aren't going well or things aren't exactly what they want. And, all that camaraderie was really coming together. So to see it play out on the field is positive. But the comment, I think Norvell made when we asked him about that on Tuesday was it just can't be, you just don't want it to be only because of the wins. Like, you don't want those feelings to only be there because things are going okay. Because if that's the case, all teams, front runners, will celebrate together when, you can't just say, oh, they celebrated together, so that means they're together. Front runners will celebrate together.
Sure.
It's how are they when things are not going well, because then that determines how you do in a game like this Saturday when you go to Clemson, or other games where things are not going to go as well as they were. But man, to your point, it feels like it's been, I don't know, 4 or 5 years since we've seen a Florida State team get the backups in and let them actually play.
Yeah.
Like, there's been a few times where backups have gotten in the end of a game for a few plays or here or there, but they actually ran, like Chubba Purdy had 3 series and scored 3 touchdowns. I mean, that was cool to see, and it's important, for the development of the program.
Yeah, I thought, by the way, that was the biggest thing that we got out of this game, was to see Chubba come in, have success, look like he was comfortable running the offense. They're going to add so much more to this offense the better they get, the more depth they have. Hopefully we'll see some of the successes in this recruiting class. But for now, they've at least found something they can fall back on, they can run, that they feel good about. And it tells everybody, what their role is and what their job is within that. And it is somewhat limiting, though. And that's why you do look ahead and you wonder, especially against Clemson, who has all kinds of problems right now. I suspect in the locker room as well as on offense, obviously, but they do show up and play defense for the most part. And the thing that Pitt was able to do, and what a team like Pitt can do that Florida State simply can't, is to fall back on a veteran quarterback with that arm, whose pre-snap reads from the pocket, checking the right protections, and really the diversity of throws that he can make is not something Florida State possesses. So the Noles can't play Clemson the way that, not offensively, they can't play Clemson the way that Pitt did.
Right, but when you say and I was thinking about this during the second half of that game, if Kenny Pickett got traded last week to Clemson, Clemson wins that game by 45.
Yes, I agree.
And so, but the flip side of that is Clemson doesn't have a good quarterback either. So you're right, Florida State's not going to be able to put 27 points. Pitt was at home with a very good quarterback. Some people think should be considered as a Heisman Trophy winner, and he was playing at home and scraped and clawed to get 27 points. Florida State's going to be going on the road without Kenny Pickett at quarterback. So, yeah, man, I'm 100% with you. The Florida State's going to have a tough time scoring a lot of points, but Clemson's quarterback situation is terrible.
Well, I just continue to marvel at the fact that the kid basically refuses to run. I don't know what's going on with that. That you remember when EJ got hurt, and then from that point forward, he just refused to run for the better part of the back end of his career. Prior to that, remember that game he ran all over Clemson?
Oh, yeah.
And you remember, you think, oh man, this guy's going to be a superstar. And then whatever happened, it startled him. It scared him, his future. I mean, he saw visions of, I guess, not being able to play or whatever it would be. And he made some business decisions. And that's not accusatory. I mean, it worked. He got drafted first round. But he wouldn't run, and he became less dynamic. And when you watch DJ, I mean, there are opportunities for that kid, and he's a hoss.
Yeah.
There are opportunities for him to take off and make plays, and he did early in the game against Pitt. He ran a couple of times, and I thought, oh, maybe they got to him. Maybe they finally pulled him aside and said, look, man, we don't have the skill that we had last year. We're banged up at wide receiver. I'm going to need you to run the football. But then he had one decent run, and then he just said, screw it, I'm not going to do it. That helps Florida State immensely. If he's going to be stationary, if he's going to be in the pocket, obviously I like this front four to take advantage of a group up front for Clemson right now that just isn't good. It's right. Just not good. So you're right. The idea that you can win it solely is centered around the fact that this defensive line can wreak havoc against a Clemson offensive line that is struggling against everybody right now. But I do think if you win it, it's going to be because you win 17-14. You win something like that, because I don't think you're going to have the success running the football against Clemson's defense that you've had against these last three opponents.
And the question from Northwest Florida boy here about, is Jordan Travis the better quarterback in this matchup? I would say this: he's the better quarterback. His offensive staff has done a better job of figuring out what he can do than what Clemson's asking DJ to do. I mean, he does not seem to be comfortable in what they're doing. Part of it's the offensive line issues. But part of it is, I mean, they ended up sitting him for a while in that game against Pitt, and that, Pitt, I don't know if you blame him for the pitch six or not. I don't know what he's supposed to be seeing there. It was just seemed like a really good, defensive call in that time. And then he got benched after that play, which makes me think maybe it was on him. But look, man, Clemson hasn't scored more than 19 points against any FBS opponent except the one game that went to double overtime. They got to 21. So, when the line came out, and Clemson's favored by 10, which kind of surprised me. I thought it might be closer to 7-ish or 8-ish, but fine, it's 10. But the total, I think the total is like 46 or 47, which, I don't know that these teams, I guess they couldn't put it much lower than that, or everybody would have hammered the over, but I don't know that these two teams combined for 47 points, just based on what we've seen.
I will say this: when they pulled DJ, I got very concerned. You
were afraid the other kid was going to become
yes,
something. Yeah,
and I'm still.
And it could.
He really could. I mean, you're starting to think that they may end up pulling DJ at this point. It's nuts. Gregory, I see your comment that DJ is a pocket passer. Yes, he is a pocket passer, but that's by choice. He can run. He's just refused to. We've watched this guy. It's nuts.
Hell, Kenny Pickett's not a better athlete than he is, and Kenny Pickett picked up some important first downs by running the football. when the defense vacates space, you can
Yeah.
pick up 5 or 8 yard extended drive, and he just is not willing to do it.
Yeah, and especially when teams go into man and turn their back
Right.
on you, and he just refuses to do it. By the way, yes, you guys out there, I appreciate you. It's interesting, I want to get to a couple of questions here, and I got bogged down. Let me get back to this. Great NFL teaser pick on Friday, Jeff. Thanks. Yes. Hey guys, I'll tell you, I'm going to start sharing my NFL teasers. Ira, really today on a side note, I'm so proud of this one that I wanted to pull this up here. I had the Packers. I teased it. I had a 3-team teaser this weekend. I gave 2 on air on Friday, and it was just a 2-team teaser. But then I thought about it more and more, and I decided to go with 3. I took the Packers and teased them down to 2.5. Took New England and teased them down to 1 point. And I took the Dolphins and teased them up to +8. And that little 3-team teaser hit at +160. So your boy here cashed in.
Nice.
And
nice.
it was a good weekend there. I was chasing a little bit there after an average Saturday. So that was nice. Also, back to this, Ryan writes, Clemson's losing to good football teams. Don't get fooled. Yeah, Clemson nearly lost to Boston College, who's not a good football team, and Clemson nearly lost to Syracuse, who Florida State beat. Clemson did just lose soundly to Pitt, so I think Florida State would lose to Pitt too. I think at this point, Ryan, while it's fair to point out Clemson's lost to some good football teams, they won 14-8 to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's not a good football team. I'm noting that Clemson's problems are real. There's something going on there. Now, it doesn't mean Florida State's going to go up there and win the game, but it doesn't mean they can't. And I'm just talking about what we think is possible here. I do think that they're in this game in the second half. My fear is, again, this offense has feasted really kind of one-dimensionally. I mean, goodness, Ira, it's not often that you score 59 points and your starting quarterback, who I know was pulled, but was 5 of 10. Yeah, I mean, that just doesn't. So we really are a truly one-dimensional team right now. That dimension is good. It's really good. I mean, and at least they found something they can fall back on.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing I would say, though, Jeff. And again, I'm not. They may go up there and get beat by 28. That's certainly within the realm of possibility. I don't believe it because Clemson hasn't scored against anybody. But I'm not going into that game thinking Florida State's going to win it. But I would say this is when you're playing a team that's as limited offensively as Clemson is, you don't have to force the issue. Like you don't have to take unnecessary risks. So I think from that standpoint, this isn't, a couple of years ago where like Florida State would go into games with James Blackman throwing the ball all over the lot and trying to, they are not, from what they've done these last few games, they're not going to beat themselves by turning the ball over. And if they do that, now you get into a field position game, you get into a game where, you break a play, Jayshon breaks a run, Malik McClain gets past the secondary, whatever it is, you give yourself a chance. To me, Clemson's struggles on offense. Now, to your point, Dabo had a teleconference tonight with the media, and Austin, our guy Austin, was on the call, and it sounds like Dabo was pretty non-committal about the quarterbacks. He said, "We'll roll one of them out there." So it's within reason that he may make a change there, and that could change things for them. But they also have other issues. I mean, the offensive line's not good. Their defense is a little bit banged up right now. So, anyway, I just think it's nice to even have this conversation. The last 3 times Florida State and Clemson have played, Clemson's outscored them, I think, like 138-35 in those 4 games or in those 3 games. So the fact that we're even entertaining the notion that Florida State can play with and maybe beat Clemson at Clemson is pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, it's a far cry from where we thought we would be, or the kind of conversation we thought we would have a few weeks back. That's for sure. One of the things that you look at, how good is Pickett? He was 25 of 39, 302 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions against a really good defense. Their top rusher for Pitt in that game, Hammond, had 66 yards rushing. So this is where I get nervous. This is where I say, okay, we don't have anybody that's going to throw 25 of 39 for 300 yards against Clemson's defense. And we don't have an offensive line that I think in pass pro is going to necessarily hold up in that way. But to your point, I think you're right. They're going to run their system. But Florida State has decided this is what they are. And that is going to allow you to play a field position game. See how that goes. I mean, the longer the game goes on and Florida State's in it, with what's happening at Clemson right now, the more pressure shifts to them. If they, I mean, that they are, I mean, listen, a few weeks ago, Clemson fans would have told you in a moment of honesty over a beer, we're going to beat your ass by 38 because we're mad at you. We think you ducked the game a year ago. Your defense can't cover. You know, you're not going to be able to block us. You guys don't have an identity. Every week, one of your quarterbacks goes out and gets hurt. Like, that's what they would have been thinking. And now here we are having a legitimate discussion about this game perhaps being close late in the fourth quarter. And I can't help but think that the amount of gripping that's going on right now at Clemson is overwhelming. And players sense that and feel that frustration. I mean, we've seen it happen here.
I was going to say, and I think we touched on this briefly last week, but we could talk a little bit more right now. But, you know, we saw what happens to teams that aren't at the top anymore. But they go into every season expecting to win a national title. And then think about the early 2000s when Florida State would be number 5 in the country preseason. They would get to, October, number 3 in the country, number 2 or 3 in the country, lose to somebody. All those dreams are dashed. And that was before the playoff era. So one game pretty much dashed your dreams. And all of a sudden, players start bickering, players start checking out, players start questioning coaches start questioning other coaches. I mean, it just becomes – it's hard. It's much easier for a Florida State football team at 3-4 to be fired up from week to week than it is to a team like Clemson that starts off it's been to how many straight playoffs to be at 4-3, have these embarrassing losses, have so many things going wrong, and to keep battling through that. That's more often than not teams struggle in those situations.
Let's hope that happens in this situation. Let's hope that continues to be the case. Where they,
by the way, I'm drinking an ultra in honor of Corey Clark in the Braves.
Yeah, the Braves.
Supporting our boy Corey. I had he was over the other day, so I got some ultra, so I'm drinking one of his.
Yeah, you won't have to worry about me sneaking in over there and raiding the fridge. You're not
gonna take the supply.
Yeah, you won't have to worry about it. Kevin asked a question and donated. Thanks, Kevin. I know it's Clemson week, but how do you feel about the Miami game after last night and the NC State game now? Miami don't look ahead, whatever that was.
They don't look dead anymore.
They don't look. Oh, I read that wrong. My apologies, Kevin. Yeah, they don't look dead at all. Well, the reason they don't look dead is the Van Dyke kid was electric. 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions, threw for well over 300 yards. I don't remember the exact numbers, but he was good. I watched that game. I will say this. NC State's receivers should be ashamed of themselves and should spend a lot of time apologizing to the entirety of that team because those sorry sons of bitches dropped everything thrown to them.
They swatted some passes.
I mean, it's like, it was something to behold. I mean, I was like, are you guys trying to throw the game?
It really looked like it.
I mean, Leary had to be like, look, you motherfuckers, catch the ball. I mean, that was something to behold. But that said, okay, yeah, they didn't catch the ball, but Miami threw the ball with exceptionally well, and they blocked it up. So, I mean, that is it's interesting. They're not dead. I did not think they would continue to fight. We'll have to see what they do next. Don't they have Pitt next?
They do. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they do.
They do have Pitt. They do have Pitt this week on the road. They're okay. Yeah.
Definitely give them credit for playing and not playing out the string. That's fine. I'm with you. I also thought NC State didn't get any pressure on that kid. To me, I thought they would. They didn't. So you can give that credit to Miami's offensive line, or you could. I know NC State's had a couple injuries. I know their defense isn't what it was earlier, and they had a kid go down in that game who's a really good player. So, we'll see. I mean, the thing about being a young quarterback, and we were just talking to, I asked Dillingham about this a couple weeks ago about quarterbacks, and he brought up the point that a lot of quarterbacks do well when they're young because nobody knows anything about them. And then once you get a little bit of tape, now defenses can figure out, oh, okay, he rolls to his right every time. Oh, okay, whenever he's got to go to a second receiver, this is what he does. Those kinds of things become more valuable. So we'll see if that kid can hold up after these next couple of games. If he's the same guy, then NC State had no real knowledge of that he was going to play like that. He had not looked like that up until this point.
Yeah, we'll see. You're right. All I'm worried about now is continuing to play well, right. even in defeat. Go play well. Go play hard and play smart and give yourself a fighting chance. If you get beat because you get beat, then you can live with that. The team has done one thing they have done a really good job with And I guess it all started basically second half against Louisville. But they've played they've played smart football. They're not committing crazy penalties at all. None of that stupid pre-snap stuff that they did at the beginning of the year. Like, very quietly, that's all gone away.
Right.
And that was the talking point amongst the fan base early in the season, was that the team plays dumb in addition to not having enough talent. But they don't play dumb anymore. They play smart. They're not always going to make great plays. They're not always going to win their individual battles because they are lacking in talent by Florida State standards. But they're not doing things to get themselves beat now. Teams are going to have to earn it, or at least it looks like that's where the direction's moved now. And if you make a team that's struggling have to earn it against you, you give yourself a chance. I think I'll be honest with you. If they stay in the game early or get a little bit of confidence early, then I like their chances to be there in some sort of war right up until the final bell whistle. But if they give up a couple touchdowns early, if you're having to play from behind against Clemson's defense and you don't have a drop back passing game, it could get ugly. So there are right. Scenarios that they have to avoid.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Jordan has gotten through these last few games healthy. He also hasn't played a defense like Clemson's. So they start doing that read option stuff. The Skowski kid or one of those dudes won't think twice about planning Jordan Travis and whether or not he keeps it or not. And then now you got to see how he can play through a different kind of punishment than what he's seen these last few weeks. So that's a wild card. And then if something happens to him, I mean, how do you feel about McKenzie Milton going in or even Chuba as well?
I'd put Chuba in there.
But, again, that's you're asking a lot of that kid against that defense in that venue. So, yeah, man, you're right. There's definitely a lot of scenarios that would really hurt Florida State. But I would say this. I mean, I think, when you look at the remainder of this schedule, and just the vibe around the team and around the program, there's a lot of people in that program right now that think they legitimately have a chance to win out. I mean, I'm not saying that that's realistic. I'm just telling you they are very confident right now. They're feeling very good, not overconfident. Obviously, how could you be overconfident going to play at Clemson after what's happened the last few years, losing 5 straight? But I do feel like there's some confidence. So I don't think they're going to go into that game and just kind of wilt. Now we'll see. It could happen. It's happened to teams before, but I do feel like they're going to give themselves a decent chance.
Circling back, how much truth is there to I heard the talking points, and I don't know if you had a chance to ask about it. I got to go back and watch. I will before tomorrow. I always go back and rewatch press conferences just to make sure I have the inside from the coaches down. But did McKenzie Milton basically defer and say, why don't you let Chuba get in there and play?
Yeah, and that's what, my guess is that the coaches probably wanted to go to Chuba.
Sure.
But the way the conversation was relayed to us from Norvell and from Chuba was that, and Chuba didn't hear the conversation. What happened was Norvell and or Kenny went to McKenzie and said either something along the lines of, do you want to go in? We're going to sit Jordan. Do you want to go in? Or should we play one of those other, the younger guys? And he said, why don't you let the younger guys play? Now, look, I think it's a nice gesture. And that's the way, certainly, Mike Norvell was selling it very much that it was McKenzie.
Well, it's the right thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And it may have been, it could have been like McKenzie's like, man, why do I need to do that? Like, do I need to go out there and take a chance with my leg in this game? Or he could have genuinely, sincerely felt like, man, let those guys play. Whatever it was, the way it was related to Chuba, I think Norvell went over to Chuba, or McKenzie went over to Chuba and said, I guess Norvell or Dillingham told McKenzie to tell Chuba. So McKenzie, I think, told Chuba, hey, man, it's your turn. Why don't you go in? And so it meant a lot to Chuba. And it's a cool moment, I think.
Well, and I think McKenzie Milton understands. I mean,
and it makes the most sense for everybody involved.
By far.
Right.
There's really not, other than if you wanted to tip your cap as a means of saying thank you to a guy who came in and has helped, by all accounts, change the quarterback room with leadership and kind of an interesting arrogance that a quarterback has to operate with, right? Sort of a command.
The same thing that Winkie had, the same thing that Tom Brady had. Other than Charlie Ward, like every great quarterback.
They've got it.
Has that swagger, yeah.
So, I actually think that's there's a couple things going on there. I think he knows he's not the player, obviously. It had to have been startling to him the time that he was out there and the grass was tackling him, and the frustration that you would feel when you can't step into throws and all that stuff. And so he knows his career is over.
But don't
And
you think? But if he was selfish, he could have been like, you know what? Let me get back out there and show these people what I can do.
right.
I'm not saying that's what he should have done, but that if he was really selfish, that could have been what he did. Now I agree with you. I think they wanted him to not play. I think they wanted him to make that decision, and they may have let him know that's what they wanted the way they asked it. But at the end of the day, he did make the right decision, and but I would say this, and I don't know what your thoughts are. I mean, I think we've talked about it some. I know we talked about it in a roundtable a couple weeks ago. If it's a close game up there, you think they go to Chuba. I think it depends on the situation. If they've got a lead late, I think maybe you go to McKenzie. I don't know.
I would have to be in that room to know where McKenzie's health is at. He looked awful the last time we saw him. He just didn't look like he could play.
He doesn't look like that in practice. I mean, let me just tell you. I mean, I know it's different in a game and in practice,
right?
But in practice, he's running around fine. He's not running around like he's carrying a dead leg or something.
Yeah.
So
then that may be why they would put him in, I guess. But I mean, he's not the future, and so I would lean always towards, in a season in which you're 3-4, I would always lean towards guys that are going to be here longer, that are going to help you down the line.
Sure.
But I understand what you're saying. Like if you got a lead and you want a kid who's had experience in big games and big moments handling the ball, I can understand why you would say that. But to me, I think he's a guy that maybe starts to accept that his future is coaching. His future is to don the headset and learn as much as he possibly can right now from this group. If I were him, I mean, he knows he has no future in the NFL. So if you want to stay in football at this point, it is going to be as a coach.
I'll reiterate what you were saying before, and I probably interrupted you, but RB Slaughter saying that message was just up there. That Milton never takes another snap. He's helped the culture 100%. I mean, like that. And Jordan, I think, has talked about that a couple times recently, that, McKenzie's kind of showed him how to be a quarterback, to the point you were making, and just the way you carry yourself. One thing about that is, somebody within the program mentioned to me once that, the quarterback's not just another guy, to try to illustrate it for people, because this was kind of enlightening for me to hear it. And, you probably, I mean, you played football, you played into college, so you have a better perspective than I would. But the point somebody made to me was everybody on the team, every position, offense, defense, special teams, can have a bad day or can miss a play or can make a mistake. But the quarterback can never make a mistake. Like the quarterback has to be totally on point. And I don't know if Jordan Travis realized that before McKenzie came in that room. And I don't know if Chubba Purdy knew that, because I definitely don't think James Blackman knew that. They're different. Quarterback has to be different. And if you're going to get those guys to follow you, and I think that's one of the many ways I think McKenzie has helped that room.
Yeah, and that's the stuff we'll know after this season ends. We'll get some firsthand anecdotes from what he did, what he said, how he interacted. We don't know it because we're not in the quarterback room to watch film. We're not there to see how he talks to these guys, because it's true, what they were hoping he could be, and the reason they took a chance on him did not work out. I mean, let's be honest, it did not work out. So at that moment, that could have gone an ugly way. He could have been defiant. He could have been embittered, could have been frustrated, could have been a bit of a burden for that room instead of a helper. Could have been a lot of things. So if all that's true and he has steady done that, it certainly sounds like it is, then I commend him, because not every guy would do that. So that's important. And now it's important that Jordan Travis certainly knows that he's the guy right now. You look at the way he carries himself now. You look at the way that the guys play for him and the way he plays, has fun playing the game right now. And I think that has a lot to do, not just with the wins, but he's healthy. I mean, this may be the first time that he's been really healthy in a long time.
There was a funny moment watching them, the quarterbacks come out. If people, not that many people get there an hour and a half before the game or 2 hours before the game, but when the quarterbacks come out, they're usually one of the first groups to come out. And, they have like the little rope around the end zone to keep, fans and recruits off the field. When the quarterbacks come out, they all kind of jog out, and Jordan like sprints and leaps over the rope. It's not high. It's probably like 3 feet high or something. but like Jordan comes out and sprints and leaps over it like an athlete, and then Tate does it. Tate's got great ups.
Well, yeah, he's an athlete. Yeah.
Chuba does it too, and then McKenzie walks over and like he's a wrestler walking into the ring. He like holds it down and like makes himself like it just cracks me up because it's like I'd be with you, McKenzie, but yeah, man, you can just see Jordan the way how spry he is. I mean, he's feeling good.
Well, I watched him, and again, one of the benefits in a game like this from just sitting down there on the wall and kind of really more than anything else, I didn't need to see the plays. I needed to see the players and the coaches. And my favorite thing was just watching how much fun they were having. And this is a consistent deal now. They've been having fun. They've had fun in intense moments too, like that Syracuse game. I mean, when you watch those guys, I remember when Iowa played Georgia Tech in the Orange Bowl. I've used this story a lot. Think about that matchup, by the way. That was some time ago. But Iowa played Georgia Tech in the Orange Bowl, and I remember that, Iowa has consistently played good defense for a very long time now. But one of the things that stood out to me at that time was just because Florida State was not a group that was consistently playing well or playing together, was that a kid for Iowa made a tackle, and the next thing you knew, 10 other players were there slapping him on the helmet over and over again, slapping him on the ass. Next play, guy breaks up a pass. The corner would get up, and then it was almost like a swarm. You'd see 7, 8, 9 players. Next thing you know, they're all there congratulating him on his success for that play. And I thought at the time that I was watching that, I said, man, they have fun playing together. These guys like each other. These dudes are like willing to lay it on the line. And defense is an awful lot about that, man. A lot of sacrifice to play good defense because I got to take on a lead blocker, or I've got to, whatever my assignment is. I may think I can make a play here, but I've been coached to, stay in line with whatever my key is. And this other guy's got to come up and make a play. I got to trust that he's going to do that. And that breeds in and of itself sort of this mentality of togetherness. And this group hasn't had it in forever. They haven't had it in a long time. And now it looks like they're getting it.
Think back to Dontavius Jackson and Levante Taylor fighting for a fumble.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Like literally, because they could see each other, and it was like, no, it's my fumble.
Yeah, I want this fumble. It's my turn.
It's just, and you see other teams, and and Corey's made this analogy a couple times recently, and I think it's appropriate. The situation where Fabian Levitt told Odell Higgins to, let Malcolm Ray take this start. After Dennis Briggs had gotten injured, and Malcolm Ray was playing real well at practice, and they knew they were going to have to count on him. Fabian's like, why don't you let him start in this game? And Corey was like, that's kind of the things you'd see in FSU basketball. Remember when Fee Cabangeli would let, or one of the other guys start, or I remember, I think it was Ojo and Chris Kumaje or something. There's been a few situations like that where guys have let somebody else start because they knew it would be better for them and their psyche. And nobody's got a better culture than Florida State men's basketball. I mean, it's what they are. And you're starting to see some signs of that. That thing with Fabian Levitt, Malcolm Ray, the thing with McKenzie and the young quarterbacks, the way, just that room, the interview yesterday, I included it in my column. Kenny Dillingham tweeted that picture of Chuba and Jordan Travis in the press conference. Man, they're happy. They really like each other. And, now again, the real litmus test to me is, how are they when things are going bad? And it could, like you said, man, we can figure out scenarios for that Clemson game where it goes south pretty quickly if one or two things happen. Now, how are those guys handling that? That's the real key.
I do think, Ira, that, and I haven't lost sight of the fact that this is not a great team. I mean, it's a fine balance that we're walking between celebrating 3 straight wins, feeling good, having found an identity. People that are pivotal to your success, playing well, playing healthy, being healthy, I should say. And also knowing that these are different animals that you're about to play. If all of the teams that remain on the schedule compete at peak efficiency, they won't, Ira. We know that. They won't. Somebody's going to be laying down by the time we play them. Somebody's going to be indifferent, but somebody may be very well inspired. And if we're just going to talk about talent for talent, Florida State is still in a hole here. And so I'm trying to be optimistic and point to these successes and the growth within the program while also noting that there may be some losses on the horizon to test all that, like you're pointing to. And I lean towards right now, from what I've seen, the people I talk to, and certainly just watching the games, I lean towards right now this culture being flipped. I believe they have done in by and large, I think they have flipped the culture. Now they got to get better. They got to get better players in here, and they got to start winning at a Florida State rate. But I think they've been able to get a foothold on a locker room that for a long time was either in disarray or was downright toxic or fractured. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think they would handle losses. Now we may have to find out. I hope not, but I think they would handle losses and just get back up and fight and try to get better.
A couple of people have asked about bowl possibilities if they get to 5 or 6 wins. Obviously, if they get to 6, they could. The deal with 5, if you get to 5, and if you've got a really good APR, basically they'll give first choice. If there's not enough 6-team wins to fill all the bowls, then they'll look for 5-team wins. And if your APR is, they'll go in order of your APR. So if your APR is good, that'll help you. There's probably other teams with 5 wins that might have better APRs, and that's the academic progress rate. But then the question is, who wants to go to a bowl game? Do you want to spend the money? Because any of the bowl games you're going to get as a 5-win team, you're going to be losing money because you're going to have to guarantee ticket sales and people aren't going to go. But I think Florida State's kind of in that spot where they might be interested more than other teams, especially if Mike Norvell is. Now, I don't know that the David Coburn and the administration's like fired up about the idea of spending.
Let's go spend money.
But given the current situation, but if they got to 5 wins and it was on the table and Mike Norvell said, look, Mr. Coburn, we have to, I guess he calls him David. David, we have to go. We need those 15 practices. Man, it would be everything for this team. They want to play in a bowl game. Then I think you do it. But, again, a lot of things have to line up. But, they could get to 6 wins and not have to worry about it and then figure out where they're going.
Well, that would be ideal. Yeah, there's a lot of things that would play into whether or not you want to go to play in a bowl. Are you healthy? How beat up are you at the end of the year? But
the nice thing is, those young offensive linemen already missed some time. It just like you said. It's just going to depend on how you're playing at that point in time. Like if you're playing your best football at that point, and maybe you play well against Florida, but you come up short, and maybe some of these young guys that haven't gotten to play much, but you really are excited about them contributing in 2023, then maybe it makes sense.
They're at the very least they're at a different place than they were 3 weeks ago. It's actually remarkable. Corey was saying on the Warchant happy hour on Friday at Corner Pocket, a lot of fun. Thanks to everybody who came out, by the way. We had a good crowd come out there, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice.
But it was interesting. He was saying, look, I legitimately thought after they lost to Jacksonville State, I'd be covering a 1-11 team, is what he said. And I didn't necessarily think that, but I did think that I might be covering a 2 or 3 win team. Certainly, it didn't feel good. It was on the table as a possibility, and then my thought immediately went to, what could you salvage? What would you salvage of this class? What would be even possible to dream for Florida State football going into the next year if this group had gone 1-10, 1-11? Excuse me. What if that had happened? And now here we are talking about maybe they go on the road and beat Clemson and win their 4th game in a row. It bears repeating. I know we did it earlier, but it does. It bears repeating. And maybe they don't go win that game. But the conversation is refreshing because it's not absurd. It's not some sort of pie in the sky discussion. It's like, if Detroit Lions fans today are sitting there thinking now at 0-7 that, well, maybe we'll turn it around and get back to 500. That'd be crazy, right? That'd be crazy. But this is not a crazy conversation.
Yeah, and to the point, somebody made earlier about, you made the point as well, and it's valid that the competition is going to get better, and you're going to face some teams here, but that's what we knew going into the season, that those were probably going to be all losses, except maybe NC State at home, I think some people thought, or maybe BC on the road, but you have seen that those teams are fallible, very fallible. They've got warts, and you've seen that this team has come together, so at least that margin has come a lot closer. Now you could, in all of those games, other than BC on the road, they may be an underdog in every game. Probably will be. That BC, they may not be because BC seems like they're circling the drain right now. Would they lose 28-14 to Louisville? They just can't score points.
Yeah, their quarterback got injured early in the year, and that's really derailed them. And they're also not nearly as good on defense as I think people thought they were early in the year because they beat up on some bad teams. Yeah, we'll see
So,
when we get to that game. But
so that's the game that they're probably most likely to win. If you were just putting odds, game by game, yeah, and the other games they're going to be the underdog in all of them. I mean, especially if Miami keeps doing, if Miami plays well against Pitt, if they play well again the next couple of weeks, then yeah, Florida State's probably going to be underdogs in all those games. So it wouldn't be a shock to see them lose them all. But man, compared to where we were, it's just, I mean, it would have been a death march if they looked like they did against Wake Forest and Jacksonville State and even the first half against Louisville. I mean, it gives you chill bumps even thinking about how bad they were.
So you said I didn't even bother. Normally I do for the purposes of the college sportsbook show that I do, and I'll be doing interviews tomorrow. I know we're going to be previewing Georgia, Florida. I know we're going to be previewing Michigan State, a game. We have a meeting tomorrow morning where I get told which games I have to preview and have on those people who cover those teams. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't already, like and subscribe to College Sportsbook. Good times. But one of the games they're debating whether or not we're going to cover is this one, is Florida State Clemson. So you may be coming on the College Sportsbook, my brother. But what I would tell you, and I guess just going through these games and looking at all these numbers, and I hadn't bothered to check our game yet. You said it was 10?
Yeah, it's 10, and Clemson's favored by 10, and I think the total is like 47 and a half, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were saying you'd bet the under right now. You'd be inclined to.
I would be inclined to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so look, I mean, again, 10 seems a little bit high the way Clemson's been playing, but shoot, man, if these last 3 weeks hadn't happened, it might have been Clemson by 25.
If you had asked me before the season what I thought the spread would be for that game, it would be Clemson by 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, 28.
Minimum, maybe 3 touchdowns. One thing I will tell you is I am very curious because they've done a good job of finding what these guys can do and putting them in positions to succeed. We talk about that's what coaching is, but they're going to put on that tape, and they know damn well that they are not going to line up and just run the ball on Clemson the way that they want to. They'll have some success, and you can't steer too far away from what you've become. I mean, this is who we are, and you got to play it that way. I am curious to see what they come up with. I mean, what they do to try to offset some of the one-on-one matchups that they can't win. Now, Atkins does a great job of creating angles in the run game. And I love going back and rewatching our games because, Ira, to be truthful, every week it's something different. When he identifies a matchup where he recognizes that one of his guys can't win, he's a realist. He's looking at that and he's like, this is not a matchup we can win. Right. So when he does that, he creates a game plan centered around angles and use of other personnel to give them a fighting chance. Sometimes, I mean, you don't have anything to reach back to, but it will be interesting to see what they decide to do because they can't steer too far away from running the ball. It's just what they are.
Right. And I think two things. One is, it's really the story of this week, probably for Florida State's offensive standpoint. Two things I would say is, one, as you just said, nobody knows that issue and that deficiency better than these coaches. Alex Atkins, Mike Norvell, Kenny Dillon. We saw it with their game plan against Syracuse, where they ran 1,000 bubble screens. They're not butting their head up against the wall if they don't think they can block it up. So, I think that means that they're going to do some things to. I don't think they're going to be able to sustain long drives against Clemson, but it wouldn't shock me if they can scheme up some big plays. And now the key is, can Jordan hit that pass?
Yeah, he has to.
He doesn't have to go 16 out of 24 or having Kenny Pickett numbers. He's not going to. But can he hit those 3 or 4 big plays? He missed one Saturday. I think it was it McLean? I think he had going deep, and he overthrew him a little bit.
Yeah, he's got him there.
Those are the plays. He's got to hit those plays. And if he does, then that gives him a chance. Because you're right. I mean, the Florida State, this what they've been doing these last 3 games where they're scoring on so many drives. Saturday they scored on 8 out of 10 drives. Right. Over the last 3 games, they've been scoring like 62% of their drives. That's not going to happen, but you've got to hit the big plays.
So they did and have done since game 1 against Notre Dame a remarkable job of scheming up a big play opportunity. There's been one in every game. And sometimes he hits them and sometimes he doesn't. Obviously, he did against Notre Dame. and it was a 60-yard touchdown. And then you go back
It did against last week
he did against North Carolina. Yeah.
North Carolina. Yeah.
Two of them. And he hits, and those are two beautiful balls. There have been a couple where he didn't hit them. I mean, they schemed up a one-on-one and inside leverage from the slot where it's a wide open touchdown in the end zone against Louisville. And he missed him by 20 yards. I mean, he doesn't even, it's a throw that you just can't, I mean, it's a terrible throw. There's no way around it. But so the point is, you only get so many chances on those shot plays. You may get 2 or 3 in this game. And if they do a good job of dialing those up, you got to hit on those, because that's where you're going to get your points from. You're not going to, as you noted, they're not going to line up and run the ball down Clemson's throat. If you look at Clemson's interior, they're going to dominate. And Dylan Gibbons getting hurt bothers me a lot. Now, do we know – somebody asked about it. I know he's not going to come out and tell us immediately. But do we know is he all right, or is he at a place, do you think, where maybe he plays this Saturday?
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, the way he went down, but I think he played a little bit more after he went down. I think he might have stayed in that series, but then he went to injury tent, then went to the locker room. What concerned me is that he never came back to the field. A lot of times, guys like Devontae Love-Taylor 2 weeks ago against North Carolina, when he got hurt, he came to the sideline. I think he even had a crutch or crutches, but he came to the sideline to watch the end of the game. A lot of times, guys, when they do get told to hit the showers, they'll come watch the end of the game. Dylan didn't do that. Now, I don't know if that means it's worse than it's not. We don't know. To me, that's not a great sign. But if Dylan Gibbons can't go, I mean, I still think they're okay as long as they don't have any other problems, because Bavion Johnson's played pretty well since he's.
Well, I've been really impressed with Bavion. Right? This is I never thought
I'd
say it, but yeah, he's played really well.
By far the best he's played. And on that note, I'll finish that thought. But when you brought up the point earlier about the lack of procedure penalties, and a lot of that is getting Maurice Smith back at center.
Yep.
And getting Dante Lucas off the field. And I'm not trying to pile on that kid, but he was good for 2 or 3 penalties a game. Bavion at center was a problem. So I think that's been a big benefit. But I do think Bavion at guard and Devontae Love-Taylor, I think, probably could have played yesterday if they needed him to. I think they wanted to get him an extra week's rest. So now if you got Devontae Love-Taylor and Bavion at the guards, you're okay. Dylan's played better than either one of them, but I think you're okay. But we'll hopefully we'll find out this week if Dylan's even able to practice. If he's not, though, still think you're okay at guard as long as you don't lose anybody else.
Yeah, you can't really lose anybody else. And you're right, man. Getting the big 3 back, as I call them, you see it. You're talking about tackle, center, tackle.
Right.
Those guys have been really good when healthy, they're good, and they're an appreciable upgrade.
And I mean, again, think about where we were 2 years ago, or a year, last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I mean, they're like competent offensive tackles, and Maurice Smith's a plus center.
Yeah, he is a plus center. He's a good player. Yeah, Williams and Smith, and obviously, yes, you're right. Bavion's kind of been the surprise of the year. He's been a Swiss Army knife for him. They've moved him all around, and when he's come in, he's played well. So I'm not saying Bavion's an elite player in this league. He's not, but he's more than serviceable. It's not a massive drop-off if he has to come in and play for Dylan Gibbons. And then, like you said, with DLT, I've been sad for DLT. He clearly is not the player he was.
Right. But you give him credit for gutting it out. But, yeah,
sure.
He's definitely limited. On Bavion is interesting, man. I definitely want to do a story on Bavion probably closer towards senior day. But so, at the end of last season, when him and Emmett Rice decided to come back, I mean, they're the last 2 Jimbo recruits. I mean, they signed here a long time ago. They're 6-year guys. And, both of them were seniors last year, but they got the extra year, decided to come back. And so I wanted to do a story on both of them. Emmett did the story. I did the story on him in the spring before he got hurt. And it was kind of about that, this idea of staying here through 3 coaching staffs. They could have transferred anywhere. Not anywhere. It's not like they would have been high profile transfers, but they could have.
Bama wasn't calling, yeah.
No, but they could have transferred somewhere, and they both wanted to stay. They believed in what Norvell's doing. Emmett talked. Bavion didn't want to talk, which is fine, but it made me wonder, like, does he really want to be here? Is he going to try to transfer? And in the spring, I don't know if you remember, he was like rehabbing. He put on a ton of weight.
Yes, he did.
I mean, if you had asked us at that point, we're thinking, man, he may not play another snap here, and he's been huge for them. Huge.
I always liked him too. Whenever I talk to the kid, he's always seemed to be so upbeat and really nice kid, and always just seemed to be bought in and love Florida State. I don't know. I always liked him. I wanted wanted him to do well. So it's good to see him have some success, albeit in year 22. He has had some success, and that's good. Better late than never, especially because we need him now. By the way, speaking of which, I saw him at Rice on the sidelines during this game. He was street clothes. Looked good, looked healthy, looked like he was moving around, no problems.
I'll give him and Leonard Warner a ton of credit, man. Those two guys, both of them got hurt in the spring. Both of them are, here for their last year, and there's no guarantee either one of them is going to get to play. I mean, they're rehabbing injuries just to try to get on the field at some point in the second half of the season. Leonard Warner is actually practicing now. He's getting closer. He's probably, I would guess, in the next couple of weeks, Leonard Warner may get into a game at defensive end,
nice.
just to give them some depth. Emmett Rice, I mean, it's probably going to be a couple more. I think he's a little bit further behind.
Yeah.
But man, that guy works every single day. It's crazy at practice to just see him working, trying to get back on the field for a few more. It's just cool, man. Like you're not guaranteed. He's not guaranteed he's going to get to play. He's not guaranteed it's going to go well if he does get out there. And so, but to keep working just for that possible chance, it's pretty admirable, I think, especially a guy in his last year.
It's very admirable. And also a lot of times if you're hurt and you're just rehabbing and you're not out on the field, you're persona non grata. People aren't around you. You don't feel part of a team. You don't feel like you're contributing in any way. You don't feel like you have anything to say that people want to hear, any of that stuff, because it's awfully hard to be hurt. And to see them not only engaged you doff the cap. You that's why you want to see them get on the field. That's why, like, it's cool that they've been good leaders and set a good example, and it's cool that they're rah-rah on the sidelines on game day. But for them, I want to see them get a chance before this season ends to have an impact in a game. Because all that work would pay off in that one moment. I don't care if it's one game. If you get back out there and you have 4 or 5 tackles and you feel like you're part of it, then it all paid off. And I want to see that for them because, like you point out, they've been a positive influence despite all this. So,
a couple of people asked earlier about McKenzie Milton possibly going into coaching and maybe being a GA at Florida State. Mm-hmm. He definitely wants to go into coaching. I think he'll be kind of a hot commodity as a GA. Honestly, I think. He's got connections. He obviously played for Heupel. He played for Frost. Played for these guys. And he's probably got other connections, other teams that played against him and got to interact with him. So I think he's going to be a hot commodity as a GA. If Florida State can make it happen, I'm sure they'd love to because he's obviously connected well with these players. But he'll be a GA somewhere, I'm sure, at the college level next year. We'll see whether or not it's Florida State.
Well, there's no question that he loves football, and it has to start there because the life of a GA and then later on the early years in coaching, it ain't easy because you're working your ass off for not much.
Well, that's why you got to do it when you're that age.
Yeah, that age. Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got to be willing to put in 17, 18, 19-hour days for very little. With the payoff being down the line many years, maybe he's a head coach. Who knows? But yeah, it has to be that. And ultimately, if you do make it up through the ranks, you do get paid a ton of money. But man, a lot of people do this and they don't make it up the ranks. He's smart enough. He's a quarterback. He obviously understands the game. It could be really interesting to watch what happens with him in his career. I wonder if he would go out to Nebraska if Scott Frost called and said, because those two really had the success. I mean, that was rather remarkable to watch. And yeah, I would think if you were McKenzie Milton, you might be more willing to go out to Nebraska if you were asked because you wouldn't have to deal with Adrian Martinez anymore. I mean, surely that kid is going to be gone after this year, right? He's in year 37 at Nebraska.
McKenzie gets the call and he's like, "Wait a minute, does the Martinez kid still have any more?"
Is that kid still there? Do I got to deal with that sorry ass? I'm not doing it.
I think that would be an interesting dilemma and. I think again, man, when you look at just kind of what they've there's some interesting pieces of this team. McKenzie's a big part of it. Jermaine Johnson's a big part of it.
My God.
And it's like I was thinking about this the other day. Like Jermaine Johnson's going to be in the NFL next year. If at some point he's a starter in the NFL on Monday Night Football or whatever,
does he say Florida State?
Did he say Florida State? I mean, I assume he would. I mean. And if that's true, that's pretty cool. I mean, the kid played 2 years at Georgia, and I do think there's something to it. I mean, we can talk about, sometimes we can get jaded and wonder whether or not players really, they say the right things or whatever. But I do feel like when he and Keir Thomas and you saw it on the sideline, like you said, you were right behind the bench. There does seem to be a genuine closeness to this team.
Do you know how happy? I mean, it's probably because he dropped the other one, but also because Florida State just doesn't ever do this. I mean, how happy they were for Brownlee after that pick six. By the way, Brownlee's dance was awesome.
It was pretty good.
I want more of that dance.
Was he close to getting flagged?
I hope not, because it was awesome. And I would encourage him to do it again. It was a really good dance. I don't know. Normally I'm like, that doesn't do it for me. That was good. I was like, yes. And you knew he was thinking about it when he was running. Because when he got there, he launched into it.
He didn't wait a second.
No.
Yeah, that was probably the most surprising thing to me was there was not even a hesitation. No.
He crossed the line, turned. It was like, here we go. My man was ready to roll. And they were cracking up. And even when he got to the sideline, I could hear the players. And like every member of that team just about came up to congratulate him. And at least 4 or 5 guys were giving him love for the dance. They're like, hey, he's had that on standby. He was ready to roll with that one. And he blew it. He was probably thinking about the dance when he dropped the other one.
I'll tell you what, man. He and Jarian Jones both. I don't know that they're the best corners in the country. They're not, but I don't know how good they are. They haven't been tested. These last 3 or 4 weeks, the pass defense has been very good, the best it's been in a long time, but they haven't been tested. Sam Howell's the only guy to test them, and he throws all that stuff over the middle, so corners didn't really get tested. But Jarvis Brownlee and Jarian Jones do have the mental makeup you want in corners. Like those 2 guys, they can get beat, they can make a mistake, but they are very confident in themselves. Very much. I think that they've got that short memory.
Oh yeah, you gotta let it go.
And that's good. I mean, again, you'd love corners that don't ever get beat, but most corners will.
They don't exist unless their name is Jalen Ramsey.
Right.
Who had another pick today.
Did he really?
Yeah, and it was sensational. He's just a freak. Yeah, he's just there'd be no living with that guy because he's really good and he will tell you about that. But but you want him. I mean, you want him on your team. That is for sure. There's just no getting around it. He's unbelievable. I think they are playing with more confidence. I still am scared to death about our linebackers in this game coming up. Everybody isolates them. Everybody gets them one-on-one and puts them in a terrible situation. But what can you do? They even those guys have gotten a little better. They're not great, but they're always going to get victimized in coverage until we get better players. So they're just weaknesses that I worry about going into this game. But again, if you can get home, if you can get pressure, they have not blocked it up. They had another injury. Clemson, by the way, had another injury. If you watch that game, and I did, they had a guy get carted off on the offensive line, Ira. And that's an offensive line that has been beat up and beat like a drum much of this year. And I think based on that kid's face and what I saw, I felt bad for him. I'm not celebrating this at all, but he looked devastated. He looked like a kid who knew his season was over. And I didn't follow up on it today. I was going to do all my prep in the morning.
I think he said in the teleconference that it's season ending. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it looked that way. It did look that way. I felt bad for that kid. I mean, but the bottom line is injuries are part of the game, and they're going to be without another guy. And Florida State's defensive line's good. It's the area that you are going to rely on to try to get a win.
The one thing I would say about Clemson, and I'd say this about Clemson, I'd also say it more Clemson. I was going to say to some degree about Miami, but definitely Clemson. Clemson's recruited so in Alabama, like they've recruited so well that they should be able to sustain some injuries. Like I don't have as much like compassion for Clemson, or I wouldn't for Alabama, because they've recruited at such a ridiculously high. Like think about Florida State in the '90s. Mm-hmm. If a guy went down or a couple guys went down, it didn't ruin the season.
Clemson's offensive line troubles, though, Ira, they haven't recruited exceptionally well on the offensive line. And they also have kind of a weird policy at Clemson where, those guys aren't going and, looking for dudes in the portal. They're not, it's an interesting – I hope it comes back to haunt them. I mean, I really do. I mean, you look at the kids that they've brought in. They've got talent for days, especially on that defense. They've had talent for days at wide receiver, and obviously we know they've just changed out one quarterback for the next, and they've all been brilliant just about. But right now they're struggling a little bit at that position. The interior of the offensive line is a mess. They were starting a true freshman. So clearly, on the interior. So clearly they didn't I don't know. They got caught in a weird position here, and it's come back to bite them, which nobody's falling asleep or feeling sad for Clemson. I mean, screw them. And it'd be great if that continues to be the problem. I just glanced up, man. This casual conversation, it's over. It's 8:00, and that was fun. Yeah, it happens quick. See what happens when you win games?
Yeah,
just everybody's relaxing. You know what we forgot to do, Ira, and it's too late. We'll have to do it next time. But we'll really have to do it next time. We started a tradition with the shots.
Oh, the tequila shots.
Yeah. Well, and maybe we can switch it up. I know you're not loving tequila, but you do have a whole bottle there that's just sitting there.
Tom does want to auction it off, so we'll see. We actually auction off my 95% of a bottle of Don Julio.
Is it just sitting there?
It's not. Yeah, I actually put it up in the cabinet. So make sure one of my kids didn't get any crazy ideas. Come in and they're just passed out with a half drinking bottle of tequila. So one quick story before we go.
Okay.
So when I was in high school, I was going over to some friend's house, and everybody was going to try to figure out a way to get some liquor or beer. And we were all like 15, 16, and we didn't have anybody who could buy it for us. So a friend of mine's like, well, why don't you see if your dad had something? So I go up and I find a bottle of scotch in my dad's whatever. He had it like above the
liquor cabinet. Yeah.
It wasn't even a liquor cabinet. It was just like a thing. And so I didn't want to take the bottle and it be missing. So I poured the bottle. I took a shampoo bottle and I rinsed out the shampoo bottle, cleaned it all out, and washed all the soap out, and then poured it into that bottle, and then filled his bottle back with water and put it up on the thing with the idea that at some point I'll figure out a way to replace that bottle. And my dad wasn't a big drinker anyway. I think he got it as a gift. And then anyway, time goes by. I never replace it. At some point, he goes to drink out of it and finds out it's water. And he comes to me to bitch about my brother, who's 6 years older than me. And do you believe what Danny did? And he just started. And he blamed on him. And I was just like, oh, man, that's crazy.
Oh, you didn't step up. You didn't step up at all.
Never said a word. And I don't think he ever brought it up to Danny, so I was good. I was gold.
At the risk of alienating my brother, I have a story for you on the next Sunday Smash.
All right.
That has something to do with my brother, and it was a startling find by my stepdad who didn't realize what he had, and me sitting there terrified, knowing exactly what he was holding that he'd found in my brother's car, and asking me about what I knew. And so anyhow, it was, it's a story that I'm still stunned by it. And it made me smile to this day, but yeah, we've all had the stories of brothers and kind of devious hiding stuff. Yeah. All that good stuff.
Who gets the blame?
All right. Matthew filled in for T Lizzie, who turns 35 tomorrow, as he was no doubt celebrating the Bucs' big win today and his pending birthday with some libations wherever he is, probably
Happy birthday, Tom. Is he going to be on the show tomorrow?
Yeah. We don't get to just take the day off. Tom, you got to show up and be a man. And I'm sure he's probably going to be a little bit a little beat down looking. So tune into Warchant TV at 1:00 tomorrow to see his face. I'm sure it'll be a little puffy.
Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, for Irish. Oh, thanks to all of you guys, by the way. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the questions. Be well. Go Noles. Good to do these things after the wins, right? It just keeps on keeping on. That's 3 straight. Let's hope it's 4. We'll talk to you. Wake Up Warchant tomorrow morning. Jeff Cameron show tomorrow afternoon at 1:00. Obviously, go to the site. Stories up all week long as we prep for Clemson. Should be a lot of fun. So all the content in the world, everything you could possibly want on warchant.com. Be good, Ira. I'll talk to you tomorrow, buddy.
See you, Jeff. Thanks, man.
Peace, everybody.